when in doubt, stop doubting or just act. Even in doubt, through doubt, trying to get my back comfortable. I've had a bit of a sciatic problem lately, or sciatic-esque. Anyway, the doubt was whether or not I should do this video now or not. This book is called Anatomia del Abismo. It's by Roberto Segroff of Colombia. I don't know, those who know the press may know this story, but a couple of years ago, year and a half ago, whatever, I published 2 books by Colombian writers who I believe to be terrific writers who should be translated. And I kind of had the idea that, maybe we could sell to Spanish readers. Well, I think maybe if Spanish readers don't know we exist, they won't buy our books. But sooner or later, they will. And I've sold a couple of the books. The other one is, damn, it's hard to get out of here. They're both great looking books. Here's the thinner one by Adolfo Villafuerte, and more of these have sold, I think, because they're thinner. Anatomia del Abismo is, as you can see, it's a chunky little fella. But I love that cover. I mean, I really love this cover too. But this painting, is a haunting son of a bitch. We got another pair of books coming out from them sometime this year. Anyway, this one's it's over 500 pages, and well, the way that we connected with these two guys who know each other is through America and the Cult of the Cactus Boots, because this guy Adolfo really wanted to read it and get it to this guy who he thought might be, in some sort of literary connective state. And, there are pictures, and there are funny fonts here and there. I don't know where they are. I really haven't been able to. We've had a couple of people working on translations, but I don't know how far any of them got. I just leave that to once I talk to a translator, and this guy, and we just can't afford to translate books. Too expensive. But it'll happen one day. And the interesting thing is both of these guys speak extremely good English, but translation is something completely different. And you I don't know what it's like to translate myself. I have a hard enough time understanding what I write in English. Anyway, so the initial connection with these two was through America and the Cult of the Cactus Boots, which came to the attention of this guy who thought it reminded him of this guy. Well, I've had a lot of contact with them since then, and mostly with this one, and I send him things from the film that I'm making through our organization here. It's called a Društvo. The film is called Portrait of a Man Drowning, and that's basically the work of me and the director, and a few other characters here and there, and it's looking really good. And I've been sending occasionally scenes to this guy, and he's quietly been developing. The film mostly is shot in Izola, and where I live, and that's on the coast of Istria, very near Trieste, and he's had a very living experience with Isola that I didn't know about until recently, and he saw Sasha, my director, recently made our first trailer for the film, and Roberto was quite exercised about it. No. Wait, what is the right word for that? Energized, maybe. Yeah, yeah. And he wrote this short story that I'm going to read you. And had you seen the film, you would understand every reference, but you'll get enough out of it to see that a really great short story. He translated it into English himself. I haven't gone through it carefully. I might change a couple words as I read. I might not. I don't know. But I read it on my phone, something I never do with fiction. You know, you get like a half a paragraph per screen, and but I didn't want to wait, and I was laying down, and I had a bad back, uh, so I read it, and I loved it. And here's how it goes. It's called "Portrait of a Drowning Man." Um, reading. But it was not entirely clear that the city was being built in the progression of the nights, that on each occasion, new territories were being suggested and expressed. With every entry into my dream, it could be that I started on a different street or departed from the same street for a series of nights, and the drift was laying out a new design of streets. But those narrow streets that were emerging with their alleys, passages, and buildings and their marlstone ground were already there, only they didn't show themselves to me until I began to walk. And the city was mine, entirely mine, always at night in my dream. I began then to draw a map. The persistence of the visits to those spaces had endowed me with a clear and accurate topographical memory. Mornings found me exhausted, but the life of the dream tormented me, and the obsession sustained me in wakefulness throughout the day until I reached unexplored areas that abruptly suspended the reconstruction work. Only then would I step back, and contemplate the landscaping of the map that was taking over the wall of my room. At first, Milena took it with indifference, as if it were a new vice in my extensive repertoire of addictions that would soon burn out, leaving only the ashes of enthusiasm. After completing the first month of work, she walked into the room, arms crossed over her chest, and I sensed her intrigue about what was emerging there. One day, as we had breakfast, I heard her say that it must be a coastal city. I looked at her and realized that I had always smelled an invisible sea, and I recalled a shipyard, marina, I think, in the distance, somewhere in the dream, but I couldn't locate it immediately because the tone in which she said it was one of concern, as if the fact that it was a coastal city, rather than an observation, was an omen. One night, I awoke in the dream amid a narrow square, barely a patch of light in the city's night, which seemed to gaze at me in terror. I turned around and noticed a tower looming over me. I intended to find the entrance to the building to get a better view from above, but the need for ascent seemed to shake me, as it didn't entirely obey that practical purpose. My dreamed self admonished for the hypocrisy of his motivations. I only wanted to enter and climb to avoid contemplating the structure from its base. I remembered a linguist from my waking life asserting, regarding an ancient poem, that many stayed near the monument's foundations, hiding in its shadow, instead of ascending to gaze from the heights of meaning. Then a sea breeze seemed to outline the scene. Platforms, trees, benches emerged here and there. A narrow street deepened into space, and tall, weathered walls cut through the wind. I headed downhill, my wise feet guiding me confidently. I passed by gateways with thick wooden doors that knew human history by heart and guarded it with a melancholic and resigned air. At the end of the alley, a solid row of walls, yellowish and governed by a fine, freckled, and greenish mold, loomed. I could turn left and climb a cobbled alley towards another square with a church that I now accurately guessed was a university, or I could go right, where a broad esplanade opened. I went in that direction, and there, at the end, asleep but attentive, was the marina. The boats swayed like huge pelicans with folded wings and beaks buried in the black, lifeless waters. The salty taste took me back to wakefulness in my bed. My feet throbbed, and my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. It was still dark, but I couldn't let the sensation escape. I got up carefully, not to disturb Milena. In the kitchen, I found a candle holder she had inherited, adorning a shelf. I lit the stove and brought the candle's petrified end close, like a remnant of the past invading that night, projecting its light into this text. I returned, and with its meager luminescence, I began desperately tracing those spaces on the wall. Dawn found me reproducing the marina. At one point in the task, I felt Milena's gaze. She observed me as if not seeing me, absorbed in her thoughts. There was no reproach, perhaps disbelief. I gestured for her to see that she hadn't been wrong, that indeed there was a coast. She sighed, but it left me unsettled, as if my actions were inappropriate. Years ago, when I mentioned my intention, Milena only remarked that if I were to carry it out, who would then light her cigarettes? She emphasized that I seemed unaware that she allowed no one but me to provide her with fire. She claimed I had taught her poorly, and that after watching that movie, ostensibly about fascism but fundamentally a love story, she had realized that only I would light her cigarettes. According to her, I had seduced her in this way, and depriving her of that gesture was cruel and selfish. However, over time, she seemed irritated because I always found reasons for delay. I would say, "I won't do it yet. I want to watch this movie first, then I'll do it." Later, I would say, "But there's a retrospective of this artist. I want us to go together, then I'll do it." It never seemed like the right moment because there was a concert I hadn't attended yet, or a play, opera, or book on the immediate horizon that forced me to postpone the plan. She would nod and get excited, but then, when we returned home and I hesitated, she appeared to fall into deep melancholy. There was an experience that refused to happen. The experience, though only experiential in the present, becomes part of a fleeting future by establishing itself as a possibility, but unfolds entirely in the past, as a recollection. I understood that she actively reflected on that fact. The question she pondered was, what would happen to all experience if I were to carry out what I intended to do? Thus, something was happening between the two of us, a crumbling or a subtle shifting of our various elements. All our actions, including hers, the most intimate ones, passed through the tight sieve of that promise. Whether we drank coffee together, bathed, went for a walk and fed the pigeons, had dinner or made love, or if we spoke in the glow of wine, the ember of a shared cigarette, it seemed that the weight of nostalgia fell like a plummet onto everything. A bronze pendulum marked each act. One night, we were dining on the little terrace of a restaurant with some friends. As the evening progressed and we spoke animatedly, Milena, from the other side of the table, stared at me through the smoke, her eyes shimmering. She said, "How do I translate the condemned moment of experience? Because experience is past, and in this action is conceived from the present for the future, denying its aging. Experience can only be tasted in the transitory moment, then, evoked, so it is in the realm of nostalgia." She hammered out the following phrases as if they were verses of a bitter poem. Nostalgia for loneliness, nostalgia for hatred, for pain, for fear. Our fellow diners resorted to aesthetics, ethics, and theology to navigate the plot she had proposed. But those opinions fell on deaf ears. because neither she nor I heard them. Later that night, upon arriving home, and after making love like desperados, as if time were running out, in the dimness preceding sleep, Milena whispered in my ear the Nordic verses. The voice drowns in the dress, her eyes follow the gladiator, and then she herself is in the arena. Is she free? A golden frame terrorizes the painting. With her strangely cold mouth, she forced me to harden again, and she leaned back over me violently, her greenish eyes illuminating the entire room, hallucinated. That night, as I entered the dream, as I entered the city, it was like traversing a world that no longer existed, a world that had emerged and transpired and closed in on itself. I understood that my being there was my destiny, and it was as if it were finally showing me how indispensable I was for the development of an enormous story, a story that surpassed me, that fleetingly needed me to be, to iterate, and in that repetition transform itself into transform itself because time is a labyrinth, and if one persists, one can hear just on the other side of the moment, at the next fold of time, when light attacks, one's steps, one's moans, the intimate breathing of a sleeping animal that fills our chest and cells. I stood before the marina with my eyes swept by a wind that was an enigma and witnessed the tired dance of the sailboats. Everything was black in that perpetual night, but I noticed something even blacker, a shadow within the shadow. A shadowy finger rose on the other side of the shipyard. Its sight expelled me from the dream, as if the fabric of the dream had sensed my presence and I had committed an indecency. I'm sure it's the Adriatic, Milena said a couple of days later. She said it in passing, as if not referring to the map on the wall, but rather criticizing the sauce I was preparing. I immediately ran to contemplate the design. Without exaggeration, I will say that my heart raced because the name of the city was revealed to me, Isola d'Istra. How could I have faithfully reproduced that city I had never visited? Was it Isola, or was it my Isola? I tried to stay awake one night, observing the layout of the city on my wall. I wanted not to return, and I wanted to know. Just when I approached it, in the vicinity of transparent vision, where that area defined itself in its rightful form, I found myself next to the chimney. I circled it, neither fearful nor surprised. That hollow obelisk of baked brick, perfectly smooth, loomed sternly in the material of the starless night. I knew then that on the impossible side of the structure, a teenager had engraved his name. I also understood that I belonged to that place. The ruins of that sardine and tuna canning plant, abandoned for millennia, with its staircases, courtyards, corridors, and walls with niches aggressively claimed by grass that sooner or later would engulf everything, absolutely everything. I woke up as if drowned, and a hoarse voice had floated above the dream as if narrating it, and had added, "We never know how people perceive us." I completed it in a whisper in the closed atmosphere of the room. It caused me a lot of problems over the course of my life. I laid there, still, holding my breath, trying to tame the annihilation that was suggested with each heartbeat. The eyes were adjusting to the darkness, dilated, I sensed, as if by the belladonna of the scarcely inhabited dream. My memory, my life, is completed, I reasoned, through the accounts of others, through how others remember my life and shared experiences, that is, in the memory of memory. In that sense, my existence in the world is like memory itself, because my volume depends on how I reflect light and how light reflects in everything else to give me substance. Then my eyes detected it. The city plan on my wall was not the city, but another city. It was Izola, and Milena had always known it. The plan of the same streets repeated itself over and over, connected, superimposed like a city upon the city, and the layout of the streets was the infamous circuit of my journey through the dream, a dream extracted from that film that had obsessed me and that I had not remembered because I lived in its scenes and was so close to its action that I had no perspective to dissociate it from my memory. The words of the man who appeared there made sense. I love this street. I'll stay here forever. No fascist is going to kick me off this street. That morning, I asked Milena to bathe me. I undressed and submerged myself in the icy water filling the tub. She caressed me slowly and massaged my head, tangling my hair. I glimpsed the ruins surrounding the chimney deep in the night and ventured into those staircases and alleyways covered in debris, grass, and orphanhood. Milena gently pressed my head, and obediently I sank, pressing a foot on a stone step. The heart continued its leap second by second, but this time like a rat caught in a trap. That's the intermingling of the mind of a Colombian author, Roberto Segroff, and brief context from Isola and through a film, clips from a film. No one's seen the whole film. It's not put together yet. But there is something magical in this connection. And once you've seen the film and read the story, and I think we may film this story, as a matter of fact, and we're definitely going to make more of this because it's already there, which is something that, in a sense, is captured in this story. It makes me think of Cortázar, the mind of Cortázar. When I first read it, I thought there's a Borgesian element here, but now I'm thinking it's Cortázar who's interfering in this life. There's the two friends 3 floors up from the street, and they're 2 boards, and they're trying to send the woman that I can't remember if they're sharing her or what, but anyway, she's, they're good friends, really, real friends. And something about Latin American writing, real friends are real friends. And so Cortázar has made this bridge between Roberto Segroff and myself, and maybe Sasha, maybe Philip Friedenberg and Jeff Walton, Cactus Boots. But something is going back and forth from one window to the other. And I don't even know what the window is, somewhere here. But it's a pretty magical thing that's happened. And I hope you were able to tolerate my reading. I became very dry in the middle of it. But I was stunned when I read this yesterday. He just sent it. And there you have it. What literature can do, what art can do, what terrain can do, what architecture can do, what the minds can do. And this is not the first amazing thing that's happened through running Corona Samizdat, but it is the latest, and it's pretty remarkable. I think that if it's possible, it is possible. Just for anyone who hasn't seen it, I'm going to try to take this off and play the the clip, the trailer, the first trailer, and I hope that you can get an idea of it. But it's always good to have a big hand in front of